Hi, good morning again, everyone. My name is Antillean Valentine, and I help to oversee the Belize Marine Fund, one of the 5 MAR Fund programs. Welcome to the 5th presentation in the MAR Fund hosted webinar series, where our partners share the experiences and outcomes and lessons learned from our collaborative efforts. Today, we have with us a presentation from the Clearwater Marine Aquarium Research Institute, and they will be sharing on their efforts to safeguard the Antillean manatees in Belize. For those of you connected via Zoom to the session, we inform that the session is being recorded and that there is also simultaneous translation, which you can access using the instructions on the screen. We also invite our participants that are connected via Zoom to share their name, organization, and country of representation in the chat. We expect that our presentation will be for about 40 minutes. And we ask that while the presenter is presenting, that any questions or comments that you guys have is placed in the chat box, and they will be responded to during our Q&A segment. We also would like to share that the session is also being live streamed on MARFund's Facebook page. And so we invite our participants on that medium to also post whatever comments or questions they might have. So again, thank you guys for being with us today. We will now move into our presentation by Clearwater. However, before doing so, I would just like to share a bit about our speaker today, who is Mr. Jamal Galvez. Since childhood, Jamal Galvez has been passionate about protecting wildlife. He started his work with manatees in 1998 at age 11 as a volunteer with the renowned manatee scientists, Dr. James Buddy Powell and Robert Bob Bundy, participating in manatee health assessments in Gales Point, Manatee, his home village. Jamal's volunteerism in the field of manatee conservation continued throughout his formative years, and he eventually gained full-time employment with Nicole Awil Gomez and the Clearwater Marine Aquarium Research Institute, formerly Wildlife Trust, in 2008 as a field assistant. Jamal worked his way through the ranks and now functions in the capacity of program coordinator for the Belize Manatee Conservation Program. For his work in manatee conservation, Mr. Galvez has received many awards and accolades, including the Belize National Heroes Award, a meritorious award from the government of Belize, and Oceania's prestigious Ocean Heroes Award. Additionally, he has been named a National Geographic Explorer and Nat Geo Photo Arc Edge Fellow. Currently, Jamal is enrolled in the Masters in Coastal Science and Policy degree program at the University of California, Santa Cruz. His research looks at utilizing the endangered Antillean manatees of Belize as a flagship species for safeguarding critical coastal habitat. Jamal, thank you for being here with us today. The floor is yours.
Angeline, and thank you to the Belize Marine Fund for let me just try and share my screen here. For the support of our work over the years. We are grateful for that support. We have not been able to continue the research that we've been doing over the years. So as Angeline had mentioned, today I'll be talking to you about our efforts to safeguard the Antillean manatees of Belize. I must make note that this is a compilation of numerous organization contributions, numerous individuals who have participated in more ways than one and has been funded by numerous donors over the years. So this is a comprehensive analysis of our work here in Belize over the years, and we're grateful for the government of Belize and the regulating bodies, Forest Department, currently the Fisheries Department as well, and all our partners and supporters over the years that have contributed to making this possible. So I'm merely sharing the work of not myself and not just my organization, but of many contributors. But just to give you a little bit about our organization, the Clearwater Marina Aquarium Research Institute, who we are. We work in some of the world's most fragile and coastal ecosystems, and we work to protect and safeguard some of the world's most endangered species. We work with whales, manatees, dolphins, sea turtles, but in Belize particularly, our efforts is focused around the endangered Antillean manatees. So what we do, to conserve a species of this magnitude and at the status at which this one is, it requires efforts on numerous platforms. We start out by research. Research gives us the ability to understand these animals, their behaviors, their lifestyle, and to better understand how are they using the habitat and how are they coming in conflict with people. That research results determine conservation action. That conservation action is then related in education, awareness, countrywide, so that people are aware of the threats these animals are facing, and they're aware of how they can be a part of making the troubles these animals face lessen. We also contribute to rescue. Rescues have been proven to be very important in helping a population recover. And lastly, inspiration. By going into schools, into communities, large and small, trying to inspire the next generation of conservationists, trying to get young people involved, get them excited about conservation, get them on the ball, wanting to safeguard and save their species. So Belize is home to the largest known population of the endangered Antillean manatees in the world, which makes it very critical, not just for Belize, and which makes our conservation initiatives here in Belize critical, not just for the species here, but for the species on a global scale. We're hoping that with the population that we have in Belize, we'll be able to do enough with the partnership, the support, the conservation actions, and community involvement, enough that would bring these population numbers up, that would eventually cause areas that once had manatees or do still have manatees, but the numbers are low, to rebound. So Belize is really the last hope for this species if the population was to be removed from the endangered list. So I'll start off about talking about some of the threats. Poaching has been the reason why manatees are endangered in Belize. We've known, it's documented that people have been hunting manatees over the years, particularly in the Punta Gorda area. In 1995, 35 manatee skulls were found at a slaughtering site, which tells you that there's a minimum of 35 animals that were killed at that specific site. I must say that with the conservation actions of organizations like TIDE and the government ability to make that area become protected has changed. We visited the area and we haven't seen any signs or any indication that poaching is still continuing. So we're grateful for that. But however, poaching has been replaced by watercraft collision. It doesn't mean that poaching doesn't still exist. There are still cases that come up every so often. But watercraft collision has now been proven to be the main threat to manatees and has been significant in terms of affecting the population. Entanglement in fishing gears, people setting nets along illegal illicit gill nets along rivers, long spans of seas. These animals get entangled in these nets and eventually they drown and die. Habitat loss has become a significant concern as Belize become one of the most sought out tourist destinations. The country prepares to accommodate the increase in tourism, which means development, and unfortunately, oftentimes unsustainable development. Where you hear things that, for instance, there are proposals for 3 cruise ship ports less than 5 miles apart from each other. Sorry. In the city that produces the highest number of manatee mortality currently, with just 1 cruise ship docking station there. So it brings into concern the pressures that can be brought upon this population with the increased development. These developments are proposing significant dredging, which will remove seagrass habitat that manatees need, clearing of mangrove, and many other environmental loss will be caused. And along with climate change, as we see the temperature rises, this affects seagrass, and manatees are dependent on seagrass for survival, which we've already seen in Florida. Pollution have caused significant die-off of seagrass in Florida that have led to over 1,000 manatees dead. So far. We're hoping that we can take the lessons from Florida to be ahead of the game and to put our best foot forward, to put measures in place to ensure that we do not end up in that situation. So the CMARI Research Institute, the Belize Marine Mammal Stranding Network started in 1995 under the Coastal Zone Management Authority and partners. Marine Mammal Strand Network involves different partners, including NGOs and non-governmental institutes from across the entire country. In all the major districts where manatees can be found. So it's a collaborative partnerships where people can. So for marine mammal stranding, we started collecting since 1995, and that effort expands along the entire coastline of Belize, including all the including the offshore atolls and the islands offshore as well. But this, like I said, could not be possible without the partners of the Belize Marine Mammal Stranding Network. Environmental health assessment, it started in 1996, and it started in Gales Point, specifically because Gales Point has shown to be a very, very important habitat for manatees, and because of the numbers of manatees there. So Gales Point Southern Lagoon area has been our ground zero, for lack of a better word. It's really our indicator, is where our baseline data was collected to be able to reference what other population look like. But that started in 1996, and we eventually moved off to Belize City, specifically because of the growing concerns as it relates to watercraft collision species there. To better understand the species there, we're hoping to research to gather the knowledge that will help us to better safeguard the species there. We then moved offshore to Turnef Atoll to get a better understanding of what manatees are doing in Turnef. Manatees do need fresh water to survive. There's not a freshwater source there. So you wanted to really gain the knowledge of why are they there, what are they doing there. And just something of note, one of the things that we've noticed is animals that are in Turnef Atoll area that we assess seem to be more healthier than animals closer to the coast, likely because Turnef Atoll is majorly underdeveloped and has less human influence. So the habitat is more pristine, and so makes the animals more healthy. But we realized that these animals actually travel back and forth from Turnef to the mainland to get fresh water and return. Studies from the three adults that we were tagged in this area, one had gone back to Belize River, the other to Gales Point to get fresh water, and the other to Placencia area. We then moved our research studies to the Placencia area. Placencia do have an important population of the species as well, and the concerns there are just as large as they are in Belize City. While watercraft collision is a serious concern there, the heavy development, the heavy unsustainable development that occurs on this very sensitive habitat is a matter of great concern. And we're hoping that the research initiative that we are carrying out, along with collaborative partnership, will be sufficient to justify the need for protection for this very, very important area. Then we started off with national population assessment in 1997, which covers most of the entire coastline of Belize, including all major rivers and waterways, including offshore atolls and offshore islands, to get a better understanding of where the manatee distribution and density. And like I mentioned, these work are a compilation of numerous organizations, numerous individuals, and have been funded by numerous donors, mainly started under the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute. The Belize Marine Mammal Stranding Network was established in 1997, but data collection started in 1995 when the discovery of the 35 manatee skulls were found in the Toledo district. This network was established to be able to better respond to stranding incident in this area. So we've partnered with NGOs, non-governmental organizations, including governmental organizations, volunteers, to help us within these specific areas to better respond and to collect these information that will help to guide conservation actions. We've provided trainings to our network members, we provided equipments over the years, and we try to ensure that the trainings are up to date with the current techniques that are used in places like Florida. The Clearwater Marina Aquarium has been the curator of the database over the years as well. The graph here shows you the numbers of Manatee stranding starting from 1995. I must say in 1995, you'll see it's an outlier that accounts for the 35 skulls that were found. We do not know if they actually occurred, if they all occurred in 1995, but it was discovered in 1995. So it could have been a compilation of poaching over the years. But generally, you see that there's a generally increasing trend as it relates to Manatee and what Manatee stranding over the years. Except in 2016, where we secured a grant from the Conservation Leadership Program, where we had specifically efforts that address the impact on Manatees, and one of the most hot spots in Manatees, which is the Belize River mouth. We were literally out there on a daily basis monitoring with the Port Authority to ensure that compliance is in place as it relates to speeding. And that, along with some tour guide training to train these boaters and tour guides about how they can boat properly within Manatee habitat, increase. However, the year following that, when the project was closed, people tend to go back to their old ways. The next easily identified decrease was during the year 2020 and 2021, and that was a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. When the country closed down, activities, especially tourism, had fallen. That we've noticed that if we were to plot these numbers along with tourism, cruise tourism numbers, you'll see that they basically have a marriage. Tourism numbers go up, Manatee debt rates follow. Tourism numbers nosedive, and so does the Manatee debt rate. But COVID-19 has brought a set of a relief for these species. Like I mentioned, the impacts were less, and so the species were less impacted. But as the country opens up, we're already into 2022, and we haven't even closed the year out yet. And you can see we're already going back to where we are. So the work, though there's numerous and years of work, the work is not enough yet. There's still more to be done. There's still a lot of efforts that needs to be put in place to ensure that we can actually safeguard the species. So these maps here shows you the result of stranding from 1995 to 2022. The map on the left, which is a heat map, shows you the number of verified stranding. It's 376 through the study period. And I said verified stranding. These are the ones that are verified. So the numbers are likely higher because there are a lot of Belize's coastline that is inhabited, that is vacant, and so reports go unreported, and so we miss out on some of those reports. But as you can see on the heat map, the area of significant concern as it relates to Manatee stranding is Belize City, specifically the areas around the Belize River mouth area. But it's note that stranding occurs along the entire coastline. So it does occur along the entire coastline, but Belize City is the area of serious concern, followed by the Placentia area, which you can see down in the southern area. It's not as bright as the Belize City area. It is also an area of concern. The map on the right takes into consideration only manatees that are impacted by watercraft collision and non-watercraft collision. So it differentiates it. You'll see the dark blue are animals that are impacted by watercraft collision over the study period. So this is from a total of 131 manatee stranding, where a total watercraft stranding was 131 manatee. So out of the 376 animals assessed, 131 of these animals were actually from watercraft. So for the country, 76.1% of the country manatee stranding actually occurs in Belize City. So that tells you the significant impact that area right there has on this population, followed by Placentia Lagoon area with 13.3%. While we look at it from the watercraft perspective, 79.4% of the watercraft collisions incident that occur in the entire country happens in Belize City. That is followed by Placencia again with 13.7%. So Manatee Health Assessment and Tagging Research started back in 1997. This project was started to be able to have a better understanding of the species health. You can't protect a species if you don't know what the status of the health is. We can say we have 500 manatees or 1,000 manatees, but if you have 500 to 1,000 unhealthy manatee, it makes the population even more at risk. So this study started in 1997 in Gales Point. It is the longest longitudinal study of this species in the world. So it's the study that has been the blueprint for a lot of conservation and manatee initiatives across the globe, including Cuba. And we partner with numerous organizations across the globe and in our region to try and better understand the species. Like I mentioned earlier, we started in Southern Lagoon and moved to Belize City, Jonquille areas, Turnef Atoll, and Placencia Lagoon. Over the years, over 300 manatees have been assessed. Over 30 manatees have been tagged to be able to better understand their habitat usage, movement patterns, behavior, and how are these animals coming in contact with human livelihood, and how can we put measures in place to avoid these incidents from occurring. And it had led to national and international partnership. Like I mentioned, over the years, we've brought Cubans to Belize to train them how to do these research, that now Cuba has their own project. We've brought students from across the globe, including including regional partners and even local partners in educational institutions. Other NGOs and government bodies have participated in this project as well. For the monitoring, you look at the animal health to get a better understanding of what these animals' health looks like. You're unable to basically tell the internal issues that these animals have by just looking at them physically. Over the years, things that have been flagged, like for instance, things such as trace elements were not found in manatee blood over the years until these recent years as Belize continues to develop, especially in places like Placencia that has heavy dredging. We're now seeing those sort of things in manatee blood, which is an indication of the habitat and which can affect these animals, the population and the reproductive cycle and their lifespan. But with the tagging data, with the tag on these animals, we can better able to understand their habitat usage. You can see the map on the right shows you the movement of one individual in the Placencia Lagoon here. It shows you that these animals actually utilize that lagoon very heavily. We are able to identify travel corridors so that direct boats away from where these animals are known to travel to better give them a chance to avoid coming in contact with boats. We're able to understand their behaviors from monitoring these animals with the tag and by uses of drones, and to be able to understand human and wildlife conflicts. The National Manatee Population Assessment started in 1997, was led by folks like Nicola Whale Gomez and Deline Valentine, and like I said, numerous individuals and entities. It was started under the Coastal Zone Management and Authority. Initially, the surveys were done in the wet and dry season to be able to better understand the correlation. But as you can see here, there's no real significant difference with the sightings when you look at the season. So there's no seasonal difference. So era surveys were not necessarily consistently collected, which is due to funding as well. And we're hoping to establish a more consistent timeline in terms of assessments so that we can better understand the population and better to flag any change in the population numbers. But surveys were carried out in 1997, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2005, 2012, 2014, and most recently, the 2022. We're grateful for the support of the Lighthawk, who have assisted us in the surveys in the previous years. And now we are grateful for the support of MARI Fund and the Harvest Key Fund for supporting this year's national population assessment. So this assessment looks at distribution, abundance, and population trend when you compare the years. As I mentioned, this year we carried out the first really true manatee abundance estimate. It was a regional collaboration between ourselves in Belize, Mexico, and Guatemala to have a better understanding of the region so that we can work together across borders to put measures in place to protect them, as we've seen that these animals do travel across the borderline. We want to ensure that they're protected just as they are here in other countries by our partners and collaborators. Under this project, the first ever population model for the Antillean Manatees was developed. And like I said, we're grateful for this. This model can now be used for the region and can now be used for the species on a larger scale. So it can now be adapted in the Caribbean so that we can now have a better understanding and a better knowledge of what the population number is like on a global scale. It was funded, excuse me, it was funded by the Belize Marine Fund and the Belize Island Holdings, and special support from the FWC and WCS in helping to coordinate these surveys. It was carried out under permits by the Ministry of Blue Economy and Civil Aviation and under the MOU with the Belize Fisheries Department. We're grateful for the continued support that make all these wonderful work possible. Excuse me. Where did we survey? The map on the right shows you the flight path, which is basically along the entire coastline of Belize. To be able to really understand a survey area, here's the equation. The survey area equals the flight path plus 500 meter buffer. And the model spatial distribution looks at grid cells plus Manatee location, flight path, the buffer, spatial covariance, and that predicts the distribution. So we basically cover the entire coastline, all major rivers, all major lagoons and waterways, including the offshore islands where manatees are known to be seen. Today I'll share with you these numbers. However, we're not going to be sharing the population estimate as that hasn't been peer reviewed as yet and nor published, and we don't want to put it out there until that has been peer reviewed and properly published. But for 2022 manatee distribution and abundance, 305 manatees were detected by the observer. The map on the right, the coloration shows you the darker the coloration shows you the area that has more density in terms of manatees, or the lighter is less dense area. Areas that were flagged as most dense, that has the highest number of manatees, were, like I mentioned, off the Belize area. Hence the reason for high numbers of stranded incidents, as it's the most dense area in the entire country, followed by Gales Point, Placencia Lagoon as well. And we've noticed there have been increased numbers in the Turnef Atoll as well. But manatees are found along the entire coastline and all these major mangrove islands offshore. But those areas have been flagged from this survey as the areas of more significant concern, and as the areas of higher population: Belize City, Southern Lagoon, Placencia. This research data is going to be contributing to the Marine Spatial Plan and the partnership with the Belize Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute. So this data will be plotted onto a habitat map that has the layers that manatees enjoy the most, which is seagrass, distance from freshwater, depth, turbidity, mangrove, to basically be an indicator to help them to indicate the most important habitat for not just for the species, but the most important marine habitat that will aid the Marine Spatial Plan to demarcate these areas as important areas and have better concerns when it comes to development of these areas and be able to support these areas. I hope that it will help to expand or add additional protected areas once we see where these where the data takes us. Looking at the manatee spatial distribution as it relates to seagrass, as it relates to mangrove, but not just where we see manatees, but areas that they are not, but they should be because the habitat is ideal for them, and start answering those questions as to why are these animals not in these places while the habitat is perfect for them to be there. So we're hoping that this data can contribute and can support the Belize Marine Spatial Plan. We're hoping that it can be a big part of it, as manatees are a great indicator species. I don't know that they'll find a better one in Belize, but I can be biased. But I think that this can be significant to the contribution of the Belize's first marine spatial plan. Some of the conservation actions and recommendations that were derived from these research. National awareness needs to be continued. Though we're doing national awareness, it needs to be continued and needs to get into these even the remote places that are not reached. Continue research and monitoring to better understand the change over period, to better flag any significant indicators, and to better understand how these animals are adapting to the ever-changing environment. Long-term funding and support for research initiative is critical, as for instance, for the ERAL survey, the gaps in these survey assessments are not the best because you're not able to determine trend easily. Government engagement and partnership is critical in terms of farming regulations and policies to better protect not just manatees, but their habitat as well. Conservation interventions in stranded hotspot is a must, specifically in the Belize district area, where we see accounts for over 76% of the country's stranding incident. Updated and improved manatee regulations that really address the issues manatees are facing, that specifically address the issues that manatees are facing, so that we can better protect them from the impacts caused by human activities. Finalization and implementation of the Manatee Recovery Plan is critical as well. That document needs to be put out there because that really is the Manatee Bible, and it really is what's going to guide us to ensure that we're doing the best thing to ensure that these animals are protected. Expand research in gap areas. There's a lot of areas that we've noted that has been flagged in terms of the increase in number of stranded numbers. To be able to understand the species within those specific sites, expanded research must be put in place to better understand not just the animals there, but how are they using those specific sites. Protection for known manatee hotspots, specifically the Belize River and the Placentia Lagoon. These two areas are two of the most critical areas of manatees that lack any form of protection. So we're lobbying the government, we're working with partners and stakeholders to see how best we can get some sort of or some level of protection for these two sensitive and important habitat for the species. Strengthening partnership with the Belize Port Authority, specifically the Belize Port Authority, as they are the regulating body as it relates to boating activities, and watercraft, as indicated, is the most concerning threat for the species. So you have to secure a better and a stronger, more strategic partnership with the Belize Port Authority to address this issue. Marine Mammal Rescue Center, additional Marine Mammal Rescue Center in close proximity to where incidents are occurring to complement the current rehabilitation efforts. As we've seen, there's been an increase in the number of incidents, an increase in the number of rescue, therefore an increase in the number of need for animals to be rehabilitated as well. And rehabilitation has proven to be a significant contribution to the conservation of an endangered species. Some of the achievement, as I mentioned earlier, this is the longest longitudinal study of the species in the world. So it is basically the blueprint to conservation of this species in many other places in the region and across the globe. The our research here has supported the establishment of wildlife sanctuaries and protected areas, and we continue to do so. And we're hoping that the research initiatives and data that we've collected over the years will also help to support the protection of the Belize River area and the Placentia Lagoon. Our research have informed policies and will continue to do so. We've established over 40 scientific publications that have been used for the conservation of the species, not just in Belize, but across the globe. We've trained and support biologists locally and internationally. We've formed national partnership with other countries such as Cuba, where we've brought people over for training to help them with their conservation initiatives there as well. We have strong international partnership, as we've seen with the ERAL survey assessment, with our partners next door in Mexico and our partners to the south of us in Guatemala. This is the first ever population model for the Antillean Manatees, so we're grateful for it. And as I mentioned, This model and the data collected this year contribute to years of studies from different organizations and different individuals that have participated on those survey assessment, on those manatee health assessment that have made this project what it is over the years. Conservation actions, maintaining stable population based on the findings of from the assessment, that it indicated that the population is stable. And kudos to our conservation action and our partners' conservation action within Belize over the years that have enabled us to keep the population at least stable. So now the effort is to move from stable to increasing. National and international awareness of the species. We've talked about manatees locally, and this species in Belize is now spoken about on international airspace. We've rescued numerous injured and orphaned manatees, and we've established an MOU with the Belize Fisheries Department, whom we're working very closely with all our conservation actions and research measures to try and keep these animals safe. Now I'll share with you a video from this year Belize Marine Fund grant that we received in 2019, sorry. But due to COVID-19, some of the deliverables were affected, and so the grant was completed once it was safe for us to continue the work. Hi, I'm Jamal Galvez with the Clearwater Marina Aquarium Research Institute, Belize. Here are some key outcomes from our 2019 Belize Marine Fund grant entitled Safeguarding Manatees and Community Livelihoods in Placencia and Belize City through research and education. Our team continued to monitor and identify existing and emerging threats to manatees through health assessment and satellite tracking and monitoring of 4 manatees in Placencia Lagoon. One of our tagged male traveled from Placencia to Gills Point, Southern Lagoon. The others were seen congregating with other manatees during field observation, and notably spending long periods on shallow seagrass beds in a very heavily trafficked area between Placencia and Mango Creek. Conservation actions should be implemented to avoid potential manatee boat collision in this area. Our research finding is being used to support the Placencia Lagoon being designated as a wildlife sanctuary. We also carried out awareness campaign within surrounding communities among students, tour guides, and fishermen. We love manatees! We hosted 3 marine conservation summer camp for close to 200 kids, held manatee tour guide training in 3 locations, and trained 125 manatee tour guides. Our team presented to more than 1,000 students at 9 schools within our study sites. In an effort to reduce manatee mortality caused by human activities, along with the law enforcement agencies, our team conducted strategic joint patrols in an effort to address illegal gill nets and the speeding within important manatee areas. Finally, along with our partners, we successfully estimated the population of the Antillean Manatees of Belize through a countrywide aerial survey and analysis and report of the last 20 years of manatee stranding data. An aerial survey was conducted in May of 2022. This is part of a regional initiative aimed at obtaining population size estimate for this Central American manatee population. This data was inputted into a model created under this grant. The model results will be published shortly. During the surveys, 4 manatee hotspots were identified for their high abundance of manatees: Belize City, Southern Lagoon, Gills Point, Placencia Lagoon, and the Punta Gorda area. A comparison with the 2014 data indicates that no major change have taken place in the Belize manatee population. The in-country conservation program can be credited for preventing this population from decline, but further work is needed to reduce anthropogenic mortality and ultimately increasing the size of the population. Our research efforts will complement the government of Belize Blue Bond and provide guidance in the protection of the Belize marine ecosystem. We thank the Belize Marine Fund and all our partners for making this possible. And with that, I'll say you guys, we're thankful to our partners and supporters that I mentioned. This research initiative is a comprehensive analysis. It's over 25 years of studies and had many different contributors, too many to mention here. But we're grateful for all who have contributed and supported this effort. And we ask that the support continue as we're keeping the population stable, but we're working towards getting it at increasing. Thank you, and I'll take any questions that you may have at this time.
Thanks, Jamal, for that very comprehensive presentation. As you said, it's been years of work since 1995 and has included a tremendous amount of efforts and partners and boots on the ground. There is much that has been done, but like you said, there is much to be done still, given considerations for things like port development and stuff like that, which will have an impact. I know you mentioned that, I think you said there were over 300 strandings, of which 131 were watercraft. So watercraft has replaced poaching, and from my back of the envelope calculations, that's like 1/3 of the strandings are actually from watercraft. So there's a lot to be done. So now we'll open up for questions. I think I see one here, which is a question from James. And he's located in Tobacco Key. James says, what recommended guidelines and protocols do you have for drone surveying of manatees in our local area in order to conduct minimum count surveys? Also, where can we share this data once we have collected it?
Yeah, thanks, James. I definitely can share with you a protocol that we use for our drone surveys. Even we do aerial surveys, but drone surveys are less cheaper, and it can be done easily and faster, and it can be done more consistently. So it's something that we also have been doing a lot. So I can share with you the protocols that we're using. The protocols takes into consideration, firstly, animal health. We want to ensure that you're flying high enough that you're not affecting the animal. And you have to take into consideration civil aviation as well. But I'll share with you the protocol, and if you have data from sightings that you document and you want to share, you're welcome to share with us. It will be included in the next population estimate. The more data that we have for the model, the more stronger the model is. So if there are organizations in other places like PG or in the north that does collect drone survey data, we'll be grateful for the data, grateful for your contribution, and your contribution will definitely be acknowledged as well.
Thanks, Jamal. So I don't know if there's any other questions on any of the other platforms. Anything from Facebook? I'm not seeing any other questions here. I don't know if there's other questions that our participants would like to share now in the chat. If there's no other questions right now, I'll just ask quickly, Jamal, and this is not a question that I got or we got today, but this was something that was asked of me previously. And I would just like to ask you to maybe speak a little bit more about your regional collaborations with our regional partners. I know that you mentioned having collaborations in Mexico and Guatemala. And I know that, as you mentioned at the top of the presentation, the aerial surveys this year were actually a regional effort. The question that I got was related to manatee strandings and whether there was any regional effort for stranding data collection. So maybe if you have any information that you can share, you can just share with us.
All right, the regional partnership is very important, as we know that these animals are not stuck behind the border. These animals no need any passport, no visa. And we see consistent movements of manatees between Mexico and Belize. We also believe that based on the genetic data that we've collected from a health assessment, that these animals are the similar population, they're sharing that same DNA across border. As it relates to stranding, we do have collaboration in terms of stranding. We do share our numbers with the Mexico counterpart for comparison. And Mexico shared their numbers with us for comparison. And I must say the numbers are night and day in terms of the numbers of stranding. The number of stranding in Mexico is very low compared to what it is in Belize, but also because Belize has more manatees to be impacted. So that probably is a justification for that. As it relates to Guatemala, we do not share stranding data per se, but in terms of a stranding incidents and there's a need for a rescue or guidance on how to carry out something in relation to stranding, we've worked with them. We've brought orphan calves from Guatemala, flown across to Belize or transported across to Belize to wild traps to get care, as Guatemala doesn't have the capacity and probably didn't know how to do it there. So the regional partnership is very critical, and so we learn from them, so they learn from us, and we continue to keep that partnership because, like I said, we share the same population, and to be able to protect them properly, we must ensure we have a strong partnership as well.
Okay, thanks, Jamal. I'm seeing another comment in the chat. I'll have to ask one of my colleagues if they can assist me with translation. It's from Nelvin Bustamante.
Yes, it.
Okay. It says Mark manatees move in the entire Gulf of Honduras or only in Belize. So I think this might be related to your tagged manatees. It says if marked manatees move in the entire Gulf of Honduras or only in Belize.
We've not documented movement south of Belize as yet, but it could probably be that the animals that we've tagged are more north of the southern border. It's much more distant for them to go that way. That's why I said there's need for additional research in gap areas, like for instance in the Punta Gorda areas that have now shown higher numbers than ever documented in the past. This is as a result of the efforts of Tide and the individuals that are partnering with that organization to have made that population in PG and Punta Gorda rebound. I mean, remember that's where 35 manatee skulls were found. So it is known that high manatee densities was there, but the poaching pressures may have affected it. We've not documented movement to the south, but we've documented numerous movement from Belize to the northern border to Mexico, as well as our partner, they've documented movement from their manatees to Belize. I would say 1 out of every 2 tags that they tag in Mexico come to Belize. And ironically, a lot of these animals go to Southern Lagoon, which sort of reconfirms the importance of that habitat. The animals will travel that far to come to this one place. But there is need for additional studies to be able to understand the animals in the southern part of the country, to see where they go and what they do and how far they actually travel south. But we've not documented movement south of Belize.
Okay, I have another follow-up question from James. What email can we contact you on for further information and collaboration on manatee research? So I guess you can follow up in the chat. So we have Jamal's email there for anyone who wants to collaborate. If there are no more questions for us today, I would just like to say thank you all for your participation, for being with us here on a Monday morning. We truly appreciate it. And I would just like to ask that there's a link in the chat for our feedback survey. This helps us to work on the craft of these webinars and to make them more, better for you guys. So we would appreciate if you guys could fill in the survey. There's a link in the chat. And once again, we thank you for joining us. This is the last of our webinars for the year. So we are rounding out the year with this webinar, but please stay tuned and keep abreast of them on social media platforms, as we will be sharing our next information of our next webinar at the top of 2023. So again, thank you all for being us, and I wish everyone a great rest of the day and week ahead. Jamal, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who tuned in to listen. Once the survey population estimate is published, we'll definitely share it with all our partners locally and internationally. Like I mentioned, this is a regional effort along with Mexico and Guatemala to help to guide conservation within your specific district or within your specific area. So that data will be shared. And I want to acknowledge again everybody that contributed to this research initiatives over the years, whether it's an organization, an individual, or a volunteer, or a donor. We're grateful for the support, and the results seen here today is of a combination of your support, and we're grateful for that. And it shows that working together we can go forward, and by continue working together, we can not just see a stable population but an increasing one. Thanks again to Marathon for the continued support for our work. It really is what keeps the work going and what keeps the efforts in Belize pushing for this effort expands not in Belize, but like I mentioned, across borders. So it's a larger impact than just the site that you may see that we study. So the fruits of these labors are larger than what we actually put in. But thanks again to all our partners and supporters, and thanks for having me here today. Appreciate the support.
All right, thanks so much, Jamal. And again, it was a great presentation. Great to have you all here, and we'll see you guys at the top of 2023 for our next webinar. Bye, guys. Have a great day.